This video is meant for publication. Stardate 000.000.0. You know what I mean. So I'm going to say some things. These are things I would normally write down, but I'm out in the woods and I think can say things. You'll find that it can seem quite elaborate or powerful or magical, and I hope that I also feel the same way, which is why I am taking the time to publish this. So you know how I feel. My cards are on the table. What about you? You get to be anonymous. So mind your manners. Enjoy your anonymity and protect yourself from the outer levels to the inner levels, because our own protective immunity at all levels about which I will speak is proportionally meted out from within ourselves and the world around us and across time and space, no matter what we think of, what we think correctly or not correctly about how power is meted out, physically and mentally, socially, economically, religiously, compulsively, obediently, appropriately, and inappropriately, so that we can't hurt ourselves and we can't hurt others, and we can all be protected to the utmost. And I'll explain it. That would feel good. So if you're feeling good, that sounds like that really supports that. So if you're out there, so I want to make people feel good. I think that would feel good. I'm not what I would call a very human-friendly druid. If I said I'm a druid, you would think, you don't seem like a very friendly person. Ergo, druids are not friendly. I always thought druids were, self-righteous, arrogant pricks or something. Because I don't know what people think of druids. I know what I think of druids, which is like pretty cool people, probably. But not the way it's presented by people usually on the internet, things like that. I find, I would be very critical of probably most people who call themselves druids, much less archdruids or archdeacons of druidry. Because quite frankly, I'm sorry, I just find that hilarious. And also laughing at myself, because pitiful me, then I don't get to be part of that society, and it sounds really fun. If you're willing to believe all that shit. Anyway, but everyone has something. They have something, I have something, you have something. And I hope we have more than something. And I hope that I err and that I'm just a bad, ignorant person, and these people have way more somethings than I could ever have. And why would I call myself a druid? And why would I wish to bring any dishonor upon druidry? Because it is just a wonderful cult. I don't know. I do know that I'm going to say some things, and I really been feeling these things lately. They're a bit abstract, figurative, religious, personal. I wonder if I'll think the same thing this time next year. I wonder if this is a suitable focus that makes me feel like all of my labors, little and large, have really taken me to this one beautiful moment of righteous knowledge that is truly my own, but also in this righteous moment, not nearly so, because I might share it with the very bones of the earth. I think that all wars on this, wars on that, in a sense, you could almost think of every strata of time and space in human terms as something where someone is kind of or not kind of, or wanting to or needing to have some kind of war, conflict-laden, debt-laden, inappropriate, unfortunately necessary, genetically imperative, kind of not so wonderful relationship with other people, animals, or things. Is that fair to say? I think that's pretty generous. I think it's like, I think there's room for criticism in all realms. Even in heaven, you can go up to the throne of the Lord and say, I don't like the toilet paper in the bathroom anymore. He's like, you don't even need toilet paper. I know. But even in the case that we should need it, it should be, 1,000 thread count. All right, Landon. I know it's heaven and there's nothing to complain about, and your heaven is just complaining about stuff. But, I know I can't really punish you or anything because there's no pain in heaven. But I think I'm going to have a little fun with this. Your ass starts bleeding in heaven. It's like, Lord, my ass is bleeding. Yes, I have the lower astral realms, and I could make use of them. It's not really happening, but you're so pathetic you've given yourself anal bleeding. Oh, look, you've given yourself syphilis. You're going to be dying in bed, and the one woman that ever showed you her boobs is going to be just putting wet napkins on your forehead, and it's going to be happening forever and ever and ever until you figure out what a putz you are. But Lord, no, that's the way it is. I think that all wars difficult. I mean, absolutely persuasive and um, powerful, and they've made impressions, haven't they? Most people like to skip off and say technology and economics and history and knowledge and schools of thought and waves and genres of human combat and um, cunning linguistics. And it's just, it's growth, it's life. It's like, whoa, billions of people trying to figure out, who owns what. And, someone's got to be in power, and other people are going to want to think they should be in power. And you know what? They were wrong. And history is the evidence of it. Just a quick, history doctoral degree for everybody. You can save yourself a few $100,000. I'm sorry. That's, it's funny because it's contained within the very finite boundaries of the combination of marijuana and antidepressants. So, no, I think it's fine. So there you go. I think there is, and I'm not saying this to be macabre, and I do have a solve. I wouldn't present a problem like this if I didn't think there was a solve. I think, and some people will nod their heads and think, duh, obvious, and others will be like, what do you mean by that? And be a little defensive, and why wouldn't you be? But I think that all wars, what they are in the world, all injustice, if you will, or all that there just has to be a certain amount of greed, and someone's just going to be powerful enough to want to take on the responsibilities of that level of power, and other people are going to feel like it has an otherworldly control over their lives, which they just can't settle themselves about day in and day out, like a kind of background radiation that they should have been king, and they just, something irritates them, and it is this and it is this, and they put it into their opinions about the local politics, the national politics, or how women are, how men are, and I certainly have stepped into that realm as a middle-aged man. And there I put myself into a nice little box for you, a circle, a biological hazard containment unit, and you can be safe from me. Because in those areas that we behave like that as humans, we're kind of pugnacious, and then you get old, and like even children are like, oh, you're not cool, you're just angry and bitter. And they don't care what you have to say anymore. I think the generations that are coming are a little more astute than that, but who knows, right? And I think out of respect, I don't make any assumptions, but it's weird to think like there are other generations of people like, what does it matter? In the sense that like they're people, aren't they? I mean, you should just say other people. What does it matter if you're a younger or older generation? You've seen the earth. I mean, how many years does it take to become acquainted with, the ups and downs of human existence? Really, I mean, truly, and give yourself a break. I mean, maybe by 5 you did know the ups and downs. And whatever was up and down for you, hopefully within a very sensible scale, was enough to kind of learn to sympathize with any and all human suffering. You're like, you've gone without your mother's milk for an extra 15 minutes, and I don't, it's funny, but it's true. I mean, maybe that was excruciating for you. I mean, how do you know? How do you know there's any more milk coming? Your brain has come through evolution or whatnot with a lot of fucking memories about not getting enough milk, and it's time to scream and get someone to do something because otherwise you're going to die. How many times has that happened? Or something in between. There's a lot of room for you to want to scream. And for that to be as agonizing as anything you ever saw, mommy's in the room, hey, honey, oh, my eardrums are bleeding, but here's a boob. It's sore, but there's some more. And your mom suffers for you, and you get your milk. And it's called weaning, everybody. I think they do it with animals. It's just, you follow a process. It's like getting off heroin. You just, a little less milk today, a little more Jell-O tomorrow. And you're like, just give them Jell-O. High fructose, full of caffeine, whatever. Just shove that down their mouths, and these babies will be completely fucking gaga for Jell-O. You're going to have to get a lot of Jell-O. They're going to get fat, obese, diabetes, and their brains are going to work in wonderful ways that don't require a lot of physical motion. It's amazing. So, I think that there is a war that not all the wars we talk about can account for, and that only Thor can win it. Okay, so that's one thing. It's a statement. I think my mother and father, as much as Thor emerges to me out of my study of runes, or the sounds of the gods, or the sounds of, I'll be a little more pedantic maybe, and say resonant and organic and super organic or psychic spheres of any and all articulations of our desire to continue living and avoid dying. In any and all ways that we're capable of doing that, given all the different things we can be sensible of enough, and with the range and nature of the organs of our mind and the organs of our body, and just like the limbs of senses that have an electrical interaction as much as those of the boughs of trees or the limpid waters of the stars. So a lot of connection, but also, enough separation to not, feel comfortable just going, hey, everything's ethereal, everyone. It's all connected in wonderful ways, and who needs knowledge? It's quite useless to say that, right? Senses and things are wonderful in that they're useful. Words are nice that they're useful. Things are beautiful, but it's nice if they're useful. I like beauty and usefulness. If I don't, we're stumbling in the areas that can be quite useless, and they can be quite useful. That's it. That's, it's like looking at tools or threads of knowledge, but just like the violin, it's within your capacity to make music, or to hear the music that I'm making, or maybe construe music into my words that wasn't there to begin with, and thereby to continue the refrain, because in the end of the music of my voice might be the beginning of the music of yours. Bored as you are with this, your mind is turned to more enjoyable occupations. And I could say you're welcome, but that would be arrogant. I could say thank you, and that would probably be appropriate. Much as I draw air out of this earth, I would hope that others could draw air from even the very last of the sounds upon my lips, that a new song may be drawn forth. There are wars which not all our wars can complete and can account for, or a war, maybe it's political, maybe it's religious, maybe it's not something we're supposed to notice, maybe it's in that category of, what if there's something dark and awful on the level of war that we would connect in a triangle, like war that we don't notice, triangulated with stuff we become too used to, triangulated with stuff we do not say, that suddenly appears before our horrified apprehension once we start thinking about the surreal proportions to which the world may have gone, the insults which we may have a voice to say we have borne, naturally or not, and by organs which can tend to have a wide range of ability to make skyscrapers and computers and all kinds of complex, massively complex medical, pharmaceutical, atomic things all over the world, but can also have a far-reaching range of capacity to communicate agony, and that it's not really happy with the state of affairs, or even hasn't been for 1,000 years. Like, when is this particular agony going to end? In this way that our organs, our minds, our judgment, which is powerful and beyond and before all culture, can speak. And this is why any culture will speak violence to other cultures, speak bad thunder or bad energy. This is why one person or one sex or one gender or one size or one nation or one time or place or awful constellation of human dynamics can speak thunder and violence and awful things to other people, and also in a way that relates to why we go to war or the unfortunate effects of doing so, whatever you may say about why or what for the various wars of the world. Which are difficult, are they not? I mean, I think it's okay to take a fairly civilian lay person, please help me, so help you, my God, Thor. I know that war has been really a big part for what humans had to do. I know I don't really have a say in it. I know that what is my voice compared to the millions of people that have gone to war or had to, and gone on and had to, and what is there to say about, like, maybe how that doesn't always add up to the best world in itself? Like, there's a lot more to talk about for all of us, that if it can spill out into our genetic profile, if it can spill out into the domestic violence of all the world, in a way that I don't like some of the suggestions or all of the suggestions of what I call supranational media, which I think is either answering to the demands of breakdowns in our home, or is at the risk of being seen to help to exploit and encourage it. This is the level of thinking at which we can scream or be paranoid, say there are necessary and irritations in our life, but we don't have to say that we have succumbed to it. Rather, that there is a raucous protection from within a deep nature of our mind and power that is meted out across many levels of connection with the ethereal and natural world around us, and with the nature of time and space. And, luck is really a part of levels of our mind that we don't and aren't supposed to have complete control over. You're not asked to make your heart beat and change your white blood cell count just by thinking about it. Like a list of things to do, keep breathing. Talk to Nancy about the extraordinary effort it takes to keep breathing, because if I stop thinking about it, I think I'm going to die. Also, pay my phone bill. So it's really great we don't have to think about everything. But we can think that there are a lot of things that have to work well for our day to go well. I'm glad my heart works. I'm glad my blood pressure. And as much as I have a voice, I feel myself over years of experiment that I add a lot to my ability to anything from observe, feel, or name the feelings and thoughts and senses which occur to me that relate in ways that I can tell and in ways that I could err on the side of projecting it, perhaps, to my respiration, anxiety, depression. Anything painful is poignant, and then indeed to a lot of the more joyous shores that I find myself in a way that I say, refer to water like I was in a rowboat. Under various conditions, you're in a rowboat, maybe you're dealing with shock, you're in a rowboat, so your daily life, and maybe you're a very sensitive person, and your daily journal could say, I'm in the rowboat again, and the sea is stormy, and the wind is blowing, but I'm crazily moving these oars, and I'm slowly kind of making it to a distant habitation. I know I'll get there, but wow, this is really difficult. And you row, and you row, and you row. Have you ever worked on a project called Personal Survival and Security, and you spend more time doing this than you do going to work and making money? And maybe you have to. There are a lot of people who can't work, shocked, hurt. What can you do? And even if you might be laying in a hospital bed waiting for your body to heal, and then you leave and maybe wait for your life to come back again, a lot of people wait for their lives to come together, and there's nothing wrong with that. I say that whatever war our body is ultimately facing, Odin wins the war, we don't. And that our parents won the war. And by being born and many other things that were also a labor and a struggle, our parents and our mothers and fathers won the war. And Odin has won the war, and Odin has to win the war. We don't win it by ourselves, but that Odin wins it, and you could call that a range of intelligence that comprehends a range of protection and a range of being able to not just defend ourselves from each other. So sex itself can be self-defense. With any sense that a woman or man is protecting themselves from, say, too much isolation or loneliness, their relationship with you becomes self-defense, and it becomes a war, doesn't it? If people are suffering from fears of not having enough, or things that have been taken away from them, so that whatever they have, they just don't feel they have enough, or enough people, or enough love in their life at all, and I could call myself one of them, how is a relationship anything more than self-defense? Do you want people to use you like a shore, that they should row upon a shore with their boat and get out and go, hey, pretend like everything's okay? Like a homeless person, like, oh yeah, I've eaten today. Yeah. Hey, are we going to have that? And then just join your life, and, sex becomes cannibalism. They're just eating you alive. They're hungry as Christians for the blood and the flesh of Christ. You're their salvation. You're the food they need to make it all right. Humans get hungry, don't they? We get hungry for things. We've all felt it. I can't say I really crave the company of women that much. I can explain why, it hasn't been very nice. And it's okay, I think there's lots of different explanations for that that'll help me learn about myself as a person, and that's fine. Odin wins the war. My parents are the sum of the sounds of the gods, which protect us from the eternal. I don't mean like from the eternal, I mean protect us like from the eternal levels. And our minds are meted out across those levels. You might say that we are one of one mind and many minds that operate like the spheres of the earth at different levels. And that is our total mind, the total mindedness of our lives that we have completely, we're resonant with. You don't have to say, I have complete control of it, or I have some magical ability nobody else has, but we're born with a kind of genius and protectiveness that no IQ is going to comprehend. It's amazing. It doesn't matter really what's your IQ, how people stumble through life. A guy with 50 IQ can live longer like Forrest Gump than someone with 200 IQ. We have inner protective systems, and death is not necessarily a failure, but that our flesh and blood, and by the stones themselves, have won this war, so that even our bones don't have to. The stones know more about us than even our bones may know, and have to. That in our salvation lay these stones upon the earth, that know as much or more than our own bones may know, to keep us safe. That the bones of our mother and father complete the language or the body of knowledge of the eternal sounds of the gods. The culmination of knowledge is the birth of our mother and father. And everything in our lives and in our families can be seen as a protection against the nameless war. And the flesh and blood that protects us, that the war doesn't want us to be able to talk about. And it gets to the area of God, and angels, and the spheres, and music, and just the beauty of our minds. And not just this mind, or that beautiful baby, or this person's family, but your mind. The genius and beauty of your mind that doesn't necessarily make you, it's not like winning the lottery, like, oh, I'm so smart, or I'm this, or I'm that. And we struggle, right? How we appear to others, and how we appear to ourselves, and the growing process. Because we're, in some sense of our growth, we're always green. Our churches are evergreen, and we are vulnerable as we are sacred in those churches. Your mother is sacred and vulnerable. Your father is sacred. The biggest man is sacred and vulnerable. The strongest woman is sacred and vulnerable. We don't show each other that in public, but we hope that people treat us accordingly. We have feelings. We all have feelings. We all have an emotional body. Powerful, protective mind. And Odin finishes the war. We don't. We don't need to. And Odin is of that intelligence that's ours, and that is meted out. The essence of the completion by our fathers and mothers' birth, and all the successions of how they've needed to protect themselves, and why, and what for, in relationship to whom and what, and those people to them, and those systems and things. This, our flesh and blood, is of the world. It is in the world. It is under the concussions of many wars, and many invisible wars, you might say. And here it is. I offer it up to thee. Your mother and father offer it up to you. This is the best I can do. I'm not totally in control of what my flesh and blood deals with, or what it has to do, but that is part of my art. That is part of who I am, my son. It is part of who your mother and father are, is what they've dealt with, and how they've had to deal with things, and how the flesh and blood of Odin deals with things, to finish the war. And not just to be fighting it off and fending it off, but even the most invisible war could be solved by the power of Thor. That our mother and father and all their flesh and blood are the completion, the apotheosis of the very sound and the systems of sounds and signals of Thor and of Odin and of the Creator, and of just the most wonderful, beautiful, and powerful, and usefully so, to be spelled out in such a matter, in such a way, or in such a time, in such a place, that a church, like an evergreen world, had first blossomed, so that our minds could make such sounds, and honor such sounds, and bring such sounds to honor our mother and father and their flesh and blood, that all should be made sound and as safe as we deserve to make ourselves to be. That the purpose of all signals and signs is to encourage us to feel safe, to put our mind at ease. That these powers between our flesh and blood, and that the heavens and the earth, can work out the safety and salvation of our people, and win all the wars as you walk on the earth. Win the war for you, maximizing all the power of all the knowledge of all the generations, of any and all joy and pain, of all of our flesh and blood back to the beginning, including the knowledge of the stones and the wooded stones and the wooded places of all the mountains of the world, which contain the knowledge of all things, even as much as our own bones could know, set upon the earth. And the joy your mother knows down into her bones, and the father who knows such a greatness in all he has dealt with down to his bones. We didn't have to understand it. Society doesn't encourage us to appreciate the level of development of the subconscious and the conscious mind, the education to appreciate the battles and the torments and the righteous pursuits of our mother and father in all of their protection from themselves or from each other, from their life, and offering all and first loving all so much, and the loyalty which they have for theirs and their responsibilities to you and themselves, and rarely managing to feel as much satisfaction as they might have liked at achieving all of that. Being superlative guardians of as much as they can, but there's only so much we can do without the help of Odin or Thor, or an appreciation of the range and power of our minds dealing with anything and everything which our minds deal with, regardless if we talk about it or can or should, along any range of human and natural dynamics in all time and in eternity, right? The problem of talking to eternity is the problem of pain and war and not feeling worthy or inclined to spend the time, much as it may be easily misspent, I suppose, in thinking about the sounds of the eternal and what they are to us, that to be human is to be heir to such sounds and the completion of such sounds in our own mother's body. She is the apotheosis of the sounds of the gods. That is what we lingered in the waters of the formation of our intelligence, which would be connected in the utmost way to all of the most wonderful, beautiful, knowledgeable, useful, and protective intelligence of all our flesh and blood and thine, each in our own way. There is the power, the strength, and the peace, and the knowledge of history. There and only there. And it has only ever been thus.